Good afternoon, good morning to the global audience of EC Council. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome all for a prestigious webinar we're doing on developing and maintaining secure products. About 8 months back, when the world hit the pandemic, COVID, a huge amount of changes came in our working, especially work from home. Hence, as part of EC Council's initiative of MasterClass, we have been doing webinars and summits globally for close to about 22 webinars till now and about 8 summits worldwide. Why we do this? We do this for the intention of connecting our global audience and recreating the content which is very important for the present pandemic which the world is going through. As part of the initiative, we do not bring any vendors on board. Hence, all our discussions are vendor agnostic, which means that true content and content which is completely not driven by any product sales is discussed on our platform. As part of the engagement, each of the members who attend this prestigious webinar also get access to Office completely free of cost, which means that you can get a complete simulation done for your organization without any cost attached. And why you're doing this? Because what we have seen is that as part of the engagement process, a lot of attacks were happening. Hence, to stop this, this was a key thing what EC Council thought to give back to the world, which was very important. So let's talk about this very important webinar out here. And not to take much time, we have a very super panel who are going to lead this for us. And most important, our moderator. I now take the opportunity to introduce our very own super moderator, Dr. Irdal Oskaya, MD of Standard Chartered Bank. He is a leading cybersecurity professional with business development, management, and academic skill who focuses on securing the cyberspace and sharing his real life skills as a security advisor, speaker, lecturer, and most important, author. He is an award winning technical expert and writer. Some of his recent awards are Hall of Fame by EC Council CISO Mag, Cybersecurity Influence of the Year 2019, Professional of the Year Sydney 2014, and many Speaker of the Year awards in conferences. He also holds the Global Instructor of the Year awards from EC Council and Microsoft. Most important, he has been working with EC Council for close to a decade and he's a mentor, a friend, and he advises EC Council in a lot of fronts. It's an honor, Dr. Idral, to have you on board and look forward for this prestigious webinar now. Over to you. Can't hear you, Dr. Idral. Can't hear you.
Thank you very much for the wonderful introduction. Honestly, I was so shy, I even muted the microphone, so just joking. Thank you again, and it's always a pleasure to be here with everybody who's listening to us, and with EC Council as a friend, as an advisor, as well as an institution which helps people to be cyber aware and get a cybersecurity career. Today, we're going to talk about securing products, how we can develop them, how we can maintain them, and I have wonderful panelists with me. They're going to help me. I want to start straight away with my panelist introduction. First is Badar Kahan. He's the director of digital mobility on NEOM. Badar is shaping the world's first integrated cyber mobility platform. I think he's joining now as well. Perfect. Thank you very much. And he has more than 15 years experience in leadership roles in both Fortune 100 companies, startups. He has designed designation strategy and led global engineering teams to guide smart city and industrial transforms. Previously, Badar served as a member as the executive team at CMET, Saudi Arabia as well. And now he's leading the Mindshape Application Center as the head of technology. Thank you for joining the session today.
It's a pleasure to be here, Adal. Thanks for the introduction.
That's why I did it. So just joking.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks.
Second panelist is Engineer Mohammed Ali Shahlan, the head of technology at Agred Real Estate Development Company. Mohammed Sharlan is bilingual, multidisciplinary motivated business technology interpreter. He is really enthusiastic to get more people in the digital transformation, train them, help them to get in the fourth industrial revolution. As a practitioner, author, and a guest speaker at many conferences such as this one. In his free time, I know he likes to research. He published so far chapters, articles, and presented in lots of events. As I said earlier, he is always willing to distinct complex problem into simple solution, add value, and volunteer. He worked out major operational assignments, portfolios, programs, and projects spanning in more than 50 countries. Thank you very much for joining, Mohammed.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
You look wonderful today, guys, next to both of you. Anyway, I think I'm going to make the panel even better with having our wonderful Victoria joining. Victoria won Rose Mallon, the Information Security and Privacy Officer, and Eurofiber. And she already made the difference. Thank you very much for joining. She is responsible for the security and privacy governance, as I said, in Eurofiber Group, which is the industry leading provider of the open digital infrastructure covering the Netherlands, Belgium, France, and stretching into Germany. Equipped with strong sense of responsibility towards all stakeholders, she is determined to enable ambitious business goals by empowering technology advancements and aim benefits with proper security and privacy controls. And on behalf of everybody here, as being the only female, thank you very much for making this panel even better.
Thank you, Erdo, for the introduction.
And last but not least, an old friend of mine, which I worked years together, and Simon Österk. He's a cloud architect, which I know he has, again, lots of passion for technology with many years experience. He has knowledge across multiple technology stacks. He likes to think forward. He is always looking for being innovative, new solutions. As I said, I worked with him in the field. I think when I was in Australia, he was in Turkey. But now our roads crossed again here in this webinar, and I'm glad that he joined. He is a successful leader across numerous geographies by leveraging sound judgment, teamwork, design thinking, and strong analytical skills. And I know he's going to add lots of value like Badar, Mohammed, and of course, Victoria. Welcome, Simon.
Thank you very much, Erdo, for the introduction.
All right. Now, let's cut the, as EC Council says, let's cut the talk and go straight into what people want to hear. I mean, everybody is fully aware of security challenges these days, right? And most of the security challenges are coming because of, unfortunately, not well developed or maintained security products. This question is for all of us, and of course, I'm going to start with, as a gentleman, Ms. Victoria first, if she doesn't mind. Now, what do you think that the developer's role is in creating secure products? Victoria?
Well,
and if
first of all,
if I forgot anything about you, please introduce yourself. Maybe we forgot to add something as well.
I know the introduction is sufficient. Let's just focus on the content for the rest of the audience. So, well, first of all, when we talk about developers, I think it's kind of important to understand that you're an engineer. So you're not only a coder, and that means that you need to be involved with the whole idea of, the thing that you are creating. It's not software, it's kind of the function. What is the value that you're adding? What is the end goal, the end product? And I think that the developer's role in that sense is to really be involved in all phases of the, software development lifecycle, and to also understand, actually what I just mentioned, the value that is being added, but also the impact. If it doesn't work, what then? How is it going to affect kind of the end users? And in that sense, be involved with all other kind of roles. Whoever is involved in the development of a secure product to together, how to call that, work together and really ensure that the product that you're delivering, that it is secure.
Perfect. First question is for all of us. Badar, what do you think that your role as a developer is And more importantly, as an architect, I know you do also lots of architecting solutions. What do you think the role is?
No, thanks, Ardal. And I think I go back to what Victoria said. It's you're developing code towards the product, right? So just maybe backing up a little bit, what you mentioned, the architecture role here is when you're thinking about building secure products, it's about, at the end of the day, a lot of times when we put software together, it's using a lot of open source tools, using certain libraries. So it's really to then understand, when you're bringing these libraries in, what type of implications do those have on your product, right? And then overall, what does that implication have on your overall service that you're going to be offering, right? What are the attack vectors that you might be putting out to really understand before integrating a solution in or a piece of code into your product, into your software base, is to then first understand, is this, what's the community say about it? What's the open source contribution to it? But then also kind of understanding, are they using any sort of memory leak issues? Understanding what you're putting into your code before just integrating, right? So a lot of times we're in this mindset of, I need to deliver the product, but it needs to be more about a mindset of, what am I putting into this product that's going to then enhance the product for my end user, right? And that, if you think about that, then you're going to be really cautious about what are the different things that you're going to be putting into your software solution. So that's where it's really important to think about architectures and backing up from the code before going down and coding everything together, is to think about what are the different packages I'm putting together, what is the implications those have, even if it's a feature that I might not be using into my software, into my piece of code, what is that piece of code going to do as an overall system when I put it together, right? So I think architecture before going into your development is really important, because that has an implication on the product and what you offer to the service that you offer to your customers.
So from what I understand from both of you, security should be built in. It's like, let me ask the same question first to Mohammed as well. Then I know he's very keen on IoTs. I'm going to have a specific question for him later. But dear Engineer Mohammed, what do you think that the developer's role is in, again, creating the secure product?
Actually, from my side, what I think, it's very important for the developer to understand that this is a journey. And what he's doing is creating value for everyone and for critical infrastructure. So when we are talking about IoT, when we are talking about smart cities, we are talking that it's very critical. Think about how transportation might be affected. Think about how the power systems might be affected. So it is very important you have this at the end, actually, in this of the journey, the value you are delivering to the world. Keeping this, actually, so you have to build security in every component you start, from the beginning until the end. And as Badr said and Victoria said, actually, we have an ecosystem. That's a lot of technologies is being used. And you should be taking care about what architecture to use, how to use it, how to build security in everyone, how to test it, because we are looking at the value that we are delivering to the whole community. And so it's very critical and very important, our role today. And technology now is being the heart of everything. So it's really very, very crucial role that we are playing as developers and as programmers to add value to the world.
Simon, what about you?
Thank you. What I'm thinking is basically, I agree with the Kahan and Victoria. So these days, like everything is open source. So when you combine all these libraries into your application, it might be help you to create agile application, because that's what productions right now, it's pushing people like, okay, let's deliver this one tomorrow or in a month or in a week. So developers basically just like rushing to finish their products. But it's adding a lot of security vulnerabilities. Like back in the days, we only have to track the .NET or Java or C++ vulnerabilities, whatever we are dealing with that as a programmer. But these days, like we have to track and follow up every single libraries, because most of the times, like people using these third-party libraries, any vulnerability on that third party is basically affecting your application globally. So anyone using that one is basically having the same security issues. And when you think from the hacker's perspective, they also knowing that, okay, if we can find out any vulnerability in this third-party library, maybe we can get a lot of like a victims. It's basically what it is. So I agree with the most of the parts, but like I said, mixing all these libraries, sometimes it's good, but sometimes it's bad, especially these days, like developers working from home. Like it's not everything it's protected right now. So I know from my customers and a lot of people, like just listen to Wi-Fi traffic, as you know, you're doing sometimes like a test, just listen to Wi-Fi traffic so you can get lots and lots of informations. So yeah, like I think they should think about their third-party libraries and integration. And I can only add just one thing, which basically I'm also on the infrastructure side. From the developers, what I see, we are getting a little bit more lazier to upgrading the software to the latest version of the Windows 10 or like the new generations of the security and plus the IoT parts. So we're not updating often the software. It should be, because like the latest version Windows 10, they give you like a lot of security, the features, but none of the developers using them. You're just basically giving the full admin privilege to software and do whatever you want. It shouldn't be like that. So they should be plan everything, and like you said, it should be foundation. Like security has to be foundation of every single application development.
I totally agree. From what I get from both of you, as I said, security should be built in. It's like when we build in tower, yes, you cannot just build the tower first saying, did we secure the building? Like, did we put enough cement or did we put enough iron on whatsoever into the building? I think it's too late. Victoria, I noticed you were smiling when some was talking. I feel like you have an experience to share with us, because when I look at my past, I used to be, you know, when I used to deliver EC Council LTP classes, license penetration testing classes, or when I was doing penetration testing, I used to see exactly what four of you mentioned. People go to the internet, they found some script, you know, I do it as well, but use it as is, without looking what is in it, or using, as Simon said, some third-party libraries, or like, I felt like you want to add something. Am I right? Or
well, yeah, I guess you're right. Well, you know, I've been programming since I've been like a little kid. I mean, although I'm now really in the security and privacy field, I'm still an engineer by heart and a DevOps junkie for sure. So yeah, I definitely also recognize kind of the issues that we have discussed, and also when working together with, you know, other engineers. But I also think the one very important part that we kind of also have to understand is that, you know, if you start out a developer, you love to create stuff. You love to build things from scratch. That's kind of the end goal, that, you know, people get enthusiastic about it. You're like, yes, I built this. But the whole security mindset, it's not really also embedded from, it's not only kind of a developer's issue to kind of also think about security. Yes, it's very important, but we also must not forget that developers are often put in kind of a situation, especially a commercial one, where they get pressure from the business. It has to be done now. And it's very hard also sometimes for a developer to kind of step up and also say, but I need more time to make sure that, you know, this product is secure and that the quality standards are there. And that is something which I've seen over and over and over, where I really have to step in and also, you know, be there and kind of defend the developer. Like, we need to give this person more time. This is not only a coder, it's an engineer. This person knows what he or she is doing. We have to also respect the time that this person is asking and give also this person the resources that he or she needs. Not everyone knows all the security application, considerations, and that's fine. We have to also make the time and resources available to also teach that person, to make sure that he or she gets, you know, the proper training or materials and whatsoever. And I think if you look at running a business or whatsoever, that is something what I see is fundamentally like a real challenge, to also respect the developers' time and resources, and not simply expect them to take care of security and not be part of that journey or that management support.
Badar, any view from architectural view? Like, what do you think as an architect? Knowing developers, sometimes they ask more time than they need. Knowing managers, I'm now one of them. We try to give less than they give. So, as an architect, where do you stand here? Maybe Mohammed, you want to add something here as well?
No, that's a very good thing, and I think what I'll add is from when we're thinking, because architects are also developers at heart, right? Because they're also concerned about how are these things put together, and really it's more about experience. So I think it's an organizational problem as well, right? So we put in emphasis on the delivery of the product, and we need to get it done. Then we naturally put out another organization called test and validation, right? To say, okay, everything that goes out then needs to be tested, validated before putting it out to the market. But then we got smarter, right? As we started to develop and get more experience on developing software, we said, well, as architects, can we now in the middle, before anyone checks in anything or looks at a script and puts it into production, can we now inject in the loop type of testing, right? So now we introduce concepts like DevOps, right? So before you check anything in, things get tested, then those then go into production. But then I think there's another angle that we need to add to this testing and validation. I would say it's the security part, right? So we have techniques to do penetration testing. We have techniques to do scanning of our code and understanding, what type of libraries are there and what vulnerabilities those libraries may possess. And then putting that into our whole software engineering lifecycle to say, before you put in this piece of code, you might be under pressure. We understand that you need to deliver the product before that goes into production, and before you even check it in, and we'll spit it right back at you. Understanding that security and a quality of the product is important to us, is that we're going to put another check in there, right? So it's moving from this passive mindset of security, right, to once the product is out, then I'll do the vulnerability testing. I'll do certain corner cases on it. Why not think about that as we think about validation and testing? Is can we put it into the loop of the whole development lifecycle? And there's already techniques to do that, right? So when you're talking about these skeleton type of formation of code, you can take a look at that and say, there's certain things that we see common trends on, how people use code, even going out to the internet and plugging it in to say, well, we see that you've used these certain parts of the code, then here's a list of vulnerabilities that exist in this piece of package, right? And then giving that information for the developer to kind of understand, because we know at the end of the day, being developers, is that we don't have that luxury of time to be able to then go sit down and understand every single line of code that this open source tool is offering us, right? It's just a difficult and daunting task. It's large packages that we need to integrate. And we're really in the mindset of delivering the product. So I think it's now thinking about how do we evolve, and we've already done that with A/B testing, kind of putting things out, but then also putting in that security in the mix to say, can we do these pre-processing even at the assembly level? Because a lot of the vulnerabilities are the memory leaks and those kinds of memory dumps and things like that. So can we, investigate that and run those products before they go into production? So it's a little bit more of an organizational thought process as well.
I see. If you don't have anything else to add, I would like to go to my second question.
I think also it's very important what Badr said, because it's a matter of a process itself. Because the process itself, everyone is looking for automation now and for agile methodologies. So when you are talking about agile, it's moving also to the software development. You are developing the code and then you are getting it to somewhere else to check it, and somehow at the same time while you are progressing. Also, you have to inject some tools like artificial intelligence tools. Currently, there is a lot of tools that can be injected to check the code. So this layer should be, it should be in the process itself, so we can add value. And by the end of the project, it's really a secure product that you are delivering to the end user. Also, the updates is very important to complete.
I totally agree, and that's why we have what we call the security development lifecycle, right? All right, yes. Perfect then. Let's go to question 2. Now we learned how we can what is the developer's role in creating secure products. Then the second question will be, how can we avoid security incidents during development? And Simon, I want to start with you.
Well, I've got some couple of examples for that one, especially from the companies. It started with one of them actually. They accidentally share the SN key file. I know a lot of developers know like the Visual Studio strong name key file, which is a certificate that we encrypt the software so no one can make changes and that kind of stuff. So I never thought like people will do that. So accidentally it goes to GitHub, and then people get a lot of copies of the SN key files, and then they make changes of the libraries. Like, it was good. After I heard that scenario, like I said, oh, maybe I should go and then check this stuff myself as well. Like, I start searching like this kind of files in the GitHub, like, or other open source providers. I'm just going and searching like, and then I find out like a lot of the issues there. Like during the development, I think as a developer, we have to make sure, or we need to know, hey, these files are very important. I should be protecting these files like better than for the libraries itself, you know, like it should be backed up maybe a couple of times and this kind of stuff, you know. But it's not. Like, you can find a lot of this kind of mistakes during the development. And like I said, right now, like maybe last 9 or 10 months, like people working from home. Like sometimes I'm getting emails like it shouldn't be in the email, like password, this and that, because developers should connect the resources in organizations. So we need to give them some privilege to be able to access these resources during the development. However, like this kind of information right now, it's all of the email. So if you accidentally hack the email right now from the one person, so you can get the entire information about the organization, which happened to one of my customers. So it was a Russian guy. He stayed, like he hacked the company, one of the computer, and then he stayed in the organizations maybe more than like 60 days. He gathered information in the 60 days, just like using the one stupid application. Anyway, he collected all the information. He waited for the right time because before the financial year, so he encrypted all the files. So there was like no exceptions for the, like they need to pay the ransom, you know, like these informations right now, it's during the development. What I'm thinking, like we shouldn't be sharing like very sensitive informations. And as a developer, like we have to protect some of the encryption files, like from my experience, because a couple of incidents happened to me or by my customers because of that. So that's it from me. Like that's my experience.
All right, thank you. So sharing is good, but I think from what I get from you is sharing how much. Badar, any point from you? Can be also architecture with.
No, I think Simon actually raised a very, very valid point, right? Because I remember when you just set up a new program and where you're kind of doing development, you go the normal life cycle where you have Jira, and then you're starting to put everything in SVN, and then you're like, okay, well, I know to make other developers' life easier, they'll need these information, so you create a script, and lo and behold, that script also has passwords in it, right? And ways to access the system, backdoors, things like that. So what we did early on and in the organization that we set up is to look at, we have this type of information that the common organization will need, right? So and looked at, can we set up a BitLocker type of password locker type of system where if somebody needs something, then they would go to that system, and then that system would automatically fill in that kind of information when they're running programs. So it again goes back to the organizational mindset. And if you're doing a startup, that's not something that you would think about because you're the only guy sitting behind the computer, or 3 of you guys and coding something up, and you're like, oh, it's easy. But then when that whole organization starts to go to 5 and 6, you're like, oh snap, I need to look around the room and I need to change my password with more people, right? So it's those small silly things that you need to think about as an organization when you're doing development yes, it might be, time consuming. You might have to put in an extra resource, but in the long run, it's actually a plus gain because now you've already made sure that you've built software with security in mind. And I think that's a mindset change, right? So it's really about, are you really building products with security in mind, or are you just saying that and then living life as normal as a developer, right? So it tells you a little bit about how even an organization or a startup really is operating and thinking about what they're actually doing versus what they're saying, right? So that's kind of how it's a good gauge if you go out to say, can I see your repository? And you can then say, are you thinking about security as your core premise, or is it an afterthought?
Victoria.
Well, as Simon already said, sometimes you can share like too much. But well, on the other hand, sharing in the sense of code reviews, that is so important. Well, there's like what I said, if you're the only one in the company, then it's going to be a little bit difficult. But if you already have someone else who can really review your code and also kind of filter out those kind of, accidental mistakes, that's already so great and important to, team up with somebody, have just a code review. But also, if you're talking about avoiding security incidents during development, what I think is very important is that you also have a kind of, how to call it, security requirements checklist. I know this sounds pretty boring and whatsoever, but if you can already have a sort of a policy or a checklist, like never put passwords in the code, or make sure it's somewhere else in a separate file that you read from the server or whatsoever, so it's never committed, or don't log certain types of information. If you can really kind of create a checklist, that's something, in the beginning it's annoying to follow, but at one point you kind of know it. You already know what's on the list. You might still forget things, but I think that also really helps to kind of build awareness and also eventually avoid security incidents during development. And well, someone has to come up also with these kind of threats. And if as a developer or development team, you can sit together with an architect, perhaps someone from security, if you even have that department, and can brainstorm about, okay, what application are we building? What is really crucial? What must not happen in our application? If you are able to translate that to somewhat security requirements, I think that you already will, how to call it, reduce the amount of security incidents during development. And you can also use those requirements also, and then, the testing or the QA phase.
You reminded me those legacy applications which used to have which some organizations still have the username password hard-coded in. And then, of course, the organization started to fire these developers up. I'm talking about all browser-based or legacy applications. Today, when you ask them to change something, they cannot. When you ask them to upgrade, they cannot. When you ask them to, I feel the pain, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Simon, but I think Simon was referring not to share within the organization, but as he said, like sending username, password, regardless how close or whatever agreements they have, to Simon via email, for example. Yeah. I assume it is encrypted email with they send the password maybe via SMS or something. They take care of this little stuff because once we're all in danger, under stress, when I say danger, right, we can always think outside the box, do some silly mistakes, but that's what I was, correct me if I'm wrong, Simon, is this what you were pointing out, or?
Yeah, it's correct. So, which basically sharing information on the WhatsApp or something like that, like all my WhatsApp are so.
In my opinion, is better than sending it. Here, hi Simon, this is the dump. This is my username password, which is also at the same time the local admin in the email. This is a bit more scarier than just saying, what's up, here's the password. Please use it as is in the email. At least it makes the hacker's job a bit harder.
Yeah, it is.
I also think it is important when trying to avoid security incidents during development is that we also really have to empower our developers to also make them see the advantages of the security part. Because I've been part of designing and building the kind of how do I call it, the first Dutch cryptocurrency exchange in the Netherlands. And for the fun part thing was we also kind of built sanity checks. If something would go wrong with the wallet, or if the would not sum up, which means either we make a stupid mistake or we are hacked or whatsoever, that the system would automatically shut down and go into like maintenance mode. For me as a developer, it's fun to build those kind of things, to be prepared. Like if this might happen, this how do you call it, this control will automatically fall in place. And if you also test it, you can really feel very empowered and also be like, yeah, hell yeah. I mean, I'm an engineer. This is something that we are prepared for and designed. How do you call it? That we designed up front. And at the beginning, what I already said, we have to really understand that our developers are not simply coders. They are an engineer, and I think that the people who aren't an engineer, that we also really have to motivate them and also make them clear, like, hey, you are here not just to write code, but to help us and guide us through the whole process, and that we need them and that we depend and rely on them, and that they also feel valued and also feel comfortable enough to also step up and mention what we need time to design this or this or whatever they advise together with the architects.
Mohammed, having the engineer title in front of you, what do you want to say in this?
Okay, actually what I said actually is it's very important that every day we are talking about governance, and when we are having such situations where a lot of people are working and a lot of environments is changing, then governance is very important thing, and we need to start actually injecting governance in this part actually of development and something like this, because for long time actually governance was not injected in certain activities. Actually it was just on the organization level, but today, and on technology major issues, but today we have to inject it in every part actually, so that everyone will know his role, how to control, and he will be educated about the governance issues, how to manage, how to handle situations, what is the impact of this situation. So by this way everyone will have an awareness and will have responsibility, so that he will start, even if he in under pressure or something like this, he can find something to protect him and to give him a nutshell that he will be protected and can act. That's in this regard actually everyone will have a rule in any breach will happen or anything will happen. So in here the organization itself, the customer, the developer, everyone will be somehow oriented and educated and protected. So that's why I try actually to inject more governance in every step, in every part actually, even in development and architecture.
All right, that's perfect. I think we can move to question 3 now. Before I go there, Mohammed, I know you're dealing a lot with IoT, and knowing all this IoT attacks, and most of them happens unfortunately because people are, as Victoria, Simon, and even Badar said, are lazy to change the default username passwords, or what do you think about when you put this development into the IoT? Get this question and answer this from the IoT perspective. What do you think the effects can be better if we would apply the best practices?
Yeah, actually, it can be catastrophic in case there is a breach on IoT systems, because it's very critical. A lot of it is very critical. And when here we are talking about layered security in case everything actually, because you'll have an IoT system and ecosystem. Maybe Badr is an expert in this as well. So we have a lot of systems and a lot of vendors and a lot of applications. So in this actually you need also the touch points, the joints between every system and another system should be also, you need to take care about it. And in here you should look at the whole story and the whole architecture, so that not to get hacked from, because the chain is weak as the weakest link. So you have to take care, very important, about which link and how to take control every joint in the chain, so that you are talking about the developer of every software and every piece of the story, the whole ecosystem that we are talking. So in here, it's really very important you consider everything.
Perfect, thank you. Badar, let's start with you this time. How to secure information leaks on QA platforms?
So I think it's more of an approach. I think it's, you know, what exactly you can do. So maybe if I talk about a bit of approaches and kind of going on to what Mohammed was saying around IoT and what we had plenty of discussions around that brainstorming sessions. So one is, you know, using IAC standards where you kind of do risk assessment, right? So where we do risk assessments for physical damage, there's risk assessment and threat analysis for, you know, looking at your product, what is your vulnerability? So it's really sitting down, methodically going through what are the different areas that your software can be accessed, and then thinking about what are the vulnerabilities, right? So that gives you a nice threat matrix, and then an approach when you're a large organization to say what do I focus my resources on, right? And then and vulnerabilities that I should, you know, close the gaps on, things that, you know, something that to take it. So it really helps you to organize. I think another good approach is if we go back to microservices approach, right? So where you're really breaking down your software into different components and smaller modules into, and we can go into a whole discussion on, you know, what is the level of microservices, whether it includes a database, whether it includes certain services. Beyond that, if you create the right boundaries, right, and you make sure that there's certain access level between your microservice database and different services that you're putting in this, and I would say profiles, it helps you to kind of make sure you're not looking at a monolithic type of programming approach. You're really looking at smaller pieces of software. So if a vulnerability happens, it's at a certain aspect and certain portion of your system instead of your whole, affecting your whole general broad system, right? So I think approaches like that can help you to kind of focus your attention on, you know, where are the vulnerabilities, scope it down to where it's, I think, a little bit more manageable than having to deal with a large system where it could be one vulnerability, but then that's a whole compromise in a whole system, right? So using more modern approaches to software engineering can help you to kind of, I would say, secure and help prevent larger leaks. So, because it's to prevent, you'll never be able to say my system is 100% secure, right? So it's how do you reduce it where you can then manage smaller pieces of the software that they're talking and you have clear interfaces. So now it goes into more modern architectures where you have clear definitions and boundaries. So you're also improving your software quality, but at the same time helping testability, helping securing your different components. So I think it's the fundamentals of just moving to modern architecture approaches.
Thank you. Victoria?
Totally agree. I've also been at the part, you know, where we started out as a big monolithic application. I was like, oh, hell no, we have to like really split this up more in smaller parts because it just makes it more manageable and with all the kind of benefits, you know, which are involved there, although there are also other different kind of challenges. But, you know, regarding the question, how to secure information leaks on QA platforms, well, it kind of depends what you mean with QA platforms. It is like if it's in the context of testing.
Like a Stack Overflow or the forums like MSDN forums, that kind of places like, okay, you know, like you ask the questions like, hey, I've got a problem with this software, can you help me? So that's the QA
question and
platforms.
answer, so not quality assurance.
Yeah.
So no cloud unit tests or whatsoever. Okay.
No.
Because in that sense, don't use production data, use test data.
No, yeah, information like usually, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
No, I really thought it was more quality assurance platforms, and I'm like, why would you, you know, run it in the cloud? Run it just, you know, locally, and well, if you can, and then just, you know, use test data and don't use production data. Just don't. So yeah, well, how to secure information leaks? Well, perhaps it's just very simple answer. Don't share sensitive information. Classify your information. Know what is, you know, information that you shouldn't share on the outside. I guess that perhaps falls in what we already discussed previously, and kind of, you know, perhaps build a checklist, mention what you should share and what you shouldn't share, and kind of avoid that that issue.
Perfect. Simon, I know you have an input in this.
Yeah, I've got some couple of companies or customers like They like to share everything on Stack Overflow, like including IP addresses, very sensitive endpoints of the organizations. Developers love this. I'm a developer too. We also had this kind of issues before, but we shouldn't be sharing very sensitive information like Victoria mentioned. So we have to have some sort of like a checklist before you could like share in your team maybe first, get them help in the team, and then go ask the MSDN. But even if you go to MSDN right now, you can find like maybe tons of informations like this type of documents is easily like you're basically giving with your own hand to the hackers, like, hey, this is my organization information. Would you like to come and have a look around? Like, this is basically what you're doing. But yeah, one of my customers basically shared some that kind of information on Stack Overflow, but it's a different scenario. It's also social engineering, so which is your topic. I'd like to talk to you later about the company name. So the developer shares information on Stack Overflow, and then a couple of people telling them, hey, I'd like to help you, but I'm going to send you a PM, so like give me more information about these issues. But after getting like a lot of screenshots of the project, like he's just basically collecting endpoint information and that kind of stuff. End of the day, they got hacked, but that was the issue. They find out. I also like to give the advice to the developers, like don't trust everyone, like especially on the social platforms like MSDN forums or any other forums like Oracle forums. When you go there, you're asking questions and this kind of stuff like, hey, I need help about this, especially right now after using third-party libraries. We don't have experience on third-party libraries because we didn't write them. We want to use them and we need help. So we need to ask people who has experience about this product. But by the time you're getting help, you're also giving a lot of information to them or sharing this your company information. So that was the questions actually about the securing mix. Like I completely agree, Victoria and Badar, about this. Like we need checklist, and we need to share this kind of leaks or incidents with the developers so they can get this idea and how to protect themselves.
Well, in my experience, it's also pretty, how to call it, then something really interesting must be going on if we're really searching for outside help and really feel we have to share our internal information to get help externally, especially on the kind of a public platform. So at one point, what we did in my previous company is also to ensure that when you have to share information, really also have another review. In our case, we had kind of a security review. So my department would step in and just like scan the code or whatever they wanted to post to double check IP addresses were gone, usernames and passwords were gone, server names were gone. Indeed, but Simon, as you said, you don't want to invite them like, here, hey, come and hack our company, come and join us. So yeah, for us, that was kind of the most simple process that we just added. And it also kind of make people, think twice, like, okay, do I really want to engage the internet and share the information, because I also have to go through security. Maybe just internally I have to speak with my fellow developers and architects and see if we can solve the information ourselves.
Perfect. All right. I think with this we can go for the next question, unless you want to add something else, Badar or Mohammed. If not,
what I think actually is we have in security, normal security like in firewalls and something, we have an approach to have multiple security layers. So sometimes, for example, I have worked for one company that are using seven layers of firewalls from different technologies. So I think this can be applied somehow. It's difficult, but it can be applied in critical environment actually, so that you have not only one quality assurance environment, you have multiple, like one or two, so that everyone will check on another solution. So in case any developer is setting some critical information, there is something to stop him actually from this and notifying him about it. So, okay, it will be hard. So, but this way, actually, the developer will not share sensitive information, or at least he can change it before he's sending it. So this is actually the same approach can be utilized in here. It's difficult to use in development, of course, because you are asking for help from everywhere. But also, it should be there and somehow, at least for very critical information.
That's 7 firewalls. It should have been 8.
I don't know why.
I had similar discussions, believe it or not, like, oh, we have an antivirus and firewall. This should protect us. I mean, why are you worrying about my code so much? I'm like, you know, honestly, I couldn't even answer. Unfortunately, it happens.
Yeah, because actually you have multiple. You have the hacker sometimes is experienced in certain technology. So that's why you put multiple technologies from in firewall perspective, actually, so that in case you are familiar with Sophos, you have another Cisco firewall. So it's you have to penetrate a lot of layers actually from different technologies before you can get into the information. And this is approach actually is like everyone is checking the other when there is some kind of either any mistrust or something like this. So this is a or critical information. So sometimes you have to do in the same actually.
Yes, I mean, this was, if you remember, I mean, probably Victoria, Simon, and Badar is not going to remember that, but you and I, if you remember when we started into IT, probably Victoria, you and Adbon, when we started in IT, they used to say, oh, you know what, let's have 2 firewall. I'm like, okay, what about port 80? And what about the web application you're using? So, all right, are they not, you know, what is the firewall going to do in between? But I see your point. With this, I want to come to my next question, right? So now, secure development lifecycle. This is usually a different way to build products. The idea of SDL, or secure development lifecycle, is to place security in front and during the product or application development process, right in front. It has different requirements such as design to test, coding to test. The SDL aims to build security into the product and application in every step. Saying that, what do you think when you build applications or websites or codes, you name it, what is the security development life cycle in your opinion? Starting with Badar, I think this time. Mr. Khan?
I was going to let Simon
I
talk
forgot
about
I'm
this
the
since he's so
moderator.
passionate.
I'm not used to moderate. I'm like, oh, okay, should I answer? Oh no, I have to give the word. In that silence, I'm like, oh, something is missing. Then my brain said, you're the moderator. But thank you for.
No. So I think it's a quite important question. It goes back to what we've been already talking about, right? So it's how do you, and for me, coming from a lot of the being a developer and then stepping back into an architecture role, it's about what are the processes that I put into place when I'm building up a product, right? So it could include the developer, it includes the tester, because they're going to be, and a lot of times you have these contentions between, well, as a tester, I need some sort of backdoor to be able to test this particular feature, right? And then the developer is like, oh, fine, here's how you do it. And then you forget in production to remove those backdoors, right? So it's about putting those checks in these processes where you're looking for, you do a scan for the basic stuff, passwords, IP, things like that in your source code. But then when you're going into I would say at the code level, doing a security scan, right? So there's different security scans that you can do in your life cycle. So put it as part of your build process. But then when you're going into, I would say that's going to only give you the static analysis of the code. Then you need to run it. So you run that code. So when we do these, I would say live DevOps type of testing, to put in and embed certain security scripts to test port open, the ports that you might have open. If you have a search field to try different, query languages in there to say, can you, get a Stack Overflow or anything like that from those input points. What are the outputs, and can you trigger a certain input to give you an output, right? So it's putting development, validation and testing, and then security as a whole mix in your whole development lifecycle as you're building code. So to me, it's typically the job of the architect to kind of look at what are the building blocks, the high level components, and then also what are the inputs and outputs that I'm expecting, and is that what it's conforming, and then looking at the edge cases, but then building the system to orchestrate all of that, right? To put in the validation and the engine that I select for testing, selecting the right engine to also test and validate from a security perspective any vulnerabilities that you might have. And it's different levels, right? So if I'm talking about C++, it might be a different mechanism that I need to use to get at more at a pointer level, at a memory leak level. Whereas in Java, you're really now testing the Java engine, right? So you have to be aware of what aspect are you considering and what software technology are you using to put the right testing mechanism in there.
Victoria, I think this question is going to be. I feel like you have a lot to say in this because even though you are not doing that much developing, but in every answer you give us, honestly I can see the developer inside you.
Yeah, well, the software engineering basically is my life. So no, well, what is the secure development lifecycle in my opinion? Well, I guess we all know the steps, so I won't be repeating that in that sense. But it is, as it already says, it's kind of a life cycle. So it's like from the start to the end. But there is never a real end. It's kind of organic. Software continually changes. We get new features, we get new questions, things get phased out. And we often forget about really phasing out because under pressure, we don't have time to phase stuff out. And then when we build new stuff, the old things which are supposed to be phased out or supposed to be deprecated, it's still there in our code. And it kind of annoys us. And it is kind of important that, with every step that you take, that we really have to reevaluate and reconsider the things that we need, but also the things that we no longer need. And that's the part where you remove stuff, but also upgrade kind of the libraries that we discussed, like in the beginning of this panel. We also have to embed that part, and we also have to test it. Upgrading, it doesn't mean that things will work. Often things will break, and you will notice that also. Not even always doing the testing phase, but you will notice in production, and then it kind of sucks if a customer has to tell you, an end user has to tell you, and you were not in control sufficiently as an engineer, knowing that it was happening. So in that sense, I would also say that if you take a look at the life cycle, the monitoring, also at the end when things are running in production, it's so important to also keep an eye on that, on the error messages that come in, and you will have a lot of false positives also. But if you are able to, monitor that in a certain way, make trends so that you're able to say like, oh, there's something going on here, let's just investigate that part. Well, I think that should also be embedded in the development lifecycle, to also design for that, so that you can really feel in control and thus kind of feel like, hey, we're building like a secure product. We can manage it and also are able to bounce back if something happens. We know where to look.
I totally agree. All right, instead of asking the same question to all of you, let's go to the next question, and I want to share a little bit as well. So when I ask you, dear Mohammed, what is your top 3 maintaining a product securely? Do you want to share any tips?
Yes, actually, I think what we are trying to do is that first, we have to look in the whole story. For the authorization policy, for example, how to make an authorization policy for everyone who is working on the project. That will be very great, actually, and everyone will know, so that in case any leakage happens or something like this, something will be hidden as well. So not the complete story will be shown here or shared. The other thing I think also is how the security metrics that we are defining. It should be defined, I think, from the whole cycle, for every developer to know what are the major security metrics that we are doing and adapting. One more thing is sometimes to have a kind of maturity models, because there is some maturity models that can help you out to see points that was not visible to you. And sometimes under pressure, we tend to lose a lot of ideas, a lot of points. So when there is a kind of maturity model that you are following and you are sharing with others, then I think this will help everyone to be on track. And in case checklist is part of it, actually, but there is a lot of other parts as well of the maturity model, so that you can make sure that your software is really accurate and in good shape. That's from my side. I think these are good tips.
Simon, same question, please.
Yeah, for top 3 maintaining product security tips. Well, every morning I start a day with the checking whatever the product I use, like a daily for you know, the library incidents or like any vulnerabilities. If I'm using Microsoft Azure, so I go check anything on the Microsoft. Basically after that, which basically takes you the rest of your day. So anyway, every day you will find some couple of issues or incidents based on the product or your library you use. And the second thing, which the Khan said, there are some tools on the right now. It's available on the cloud, the AI tools, which basically, if you use the GitHub libraries, and if there are some incidents on the library, so which basically warn you or send you the notification, hey, there is a problem with this library, you might want to consider to, you know, like replace with a new version and that kind of stuff. So maybe like as a developer, like they should be integrating this one in a pipeline, because we're already using like the development pipeline, like Victoria explained. We're not only one person writing this code anymore, so we're using like the cloud or like Azure DevOps tools, like for automating everything. There are some tools, like all you need to do is just like some check boxes, like which basically automatically protecting you, like, hey, check my NuGet packages or check my third-party libraries. If there are any incidents, just like warn me. So my top maintaining product security tips will be like just one of them, like you know, just security, like check the libraries, third-party libraries. Don't share extra information, and like again, Victoria just talk about like there is no end with the product, so daily, you know, it's like keep developing.
I know I said I'm not gonna ask all questions to all of you, but I feel like Mohammed has some input here as well. What is the top 3 maintaining security tips, Mohammed?
Yeah, I have add few cents in this, but if you want, I can add more sense in this actually. So I think also the process itself, we need to add to have the process very well defined, and the documentation that's following, we are following and adding in this will be very important for everyone actually. So while we are putting information, while we are putting documentation, then we see how we are learning lessons actually for the next experience. So I think this will be fine in sharing experience and in seeing how we will document, how we'll put our processes. So I think this is the most important thing, is to think about these processes that we are tackling at the maturity models, as I said before, that we are adapting, because there is, this will improve security for next project that we are working on and for the end user. So
Victoria,
that's fine.
Well, we already mentioned certain things that I also would say. So just to add on that, I would say get also someone at one point involved who's like a real third party. Get someone to pen test you, or to, you know, have like a fresh view of what you're doing, because at one point you might get a kind of tunnel vision and not see certain things and not realize certain things. So I guess that is very important to get it tested, and then also learn from that and see, you know, what are kind of the key points that you should also you know, spend more time or attention towards. And also don't underestimate input validation. It's not only kind of, you know, an input field and whatever you can type in, but also, as Badr already said, you know, if you work from a monolith and you try to split things up in like services to kind of make things, you know, easier, less complex to manage. Also there, it's not necessarily that you can then trust the other service. You know, servers can get compromised. So also make sure that when you segregate stuff, to also protect kind of the small package individually, because, you know, otherwise the impact could be bigger than you would like to have, and then the kind of reason why you designed to separate things, it kind of, you know, disappears. And well, perhaps this is how to call it, somewhat kind of an easy thing to say, but automate as much as you can. Nobody, especially if you're a developer or someone in the IT field, we hate to do things twice. If you can develop all the standard steps that you have to take on a daily basis, weekly basis, or whatever basis, you know, that kind of, you really don't have to waste time on there. You can use that valuable time on other stuff to kind of improve the quality of your product and hopefully also the security.
Perfect. Let's go to the next question then. which I'm going to ask Badar first, because I didn't get his opinion on this, and I didn't forget that. Don't worry. Now, this is also a question which I wanted to get information more about from Mohammed, but I don't know, maybe IoT is getting more and more popular, and getting an architecture view from Badar will, I think, add lots of value to everybody who's listening. Now, software lies at the core of every IoT system and services. We all know that. Not just IoT system, I think software lies under everything, right? Except human DNA. Enabling the functionality and providing value-added features. So what are the components of IoT system that need security enforcement for you as an architect?
Yeah, excellent question.
Yeah. Which I'm going to address this question shortly. How, look, you need to develop it. You need to you need to build infrastructure based on what is developed. So what are you going to tell Mohammed, based on the question, to do it right to make your life easier?
So Ardell, I think you're asking me or Mohammed this question.
For you, I asked the architecture point. For Mohammed, correct, I'm going to ask the question as this.
So you asked two questions coupled into one, so two questions.
For Mohammed, you as an architect, how would you go to your developer who's going to develop the IoT for you? How would you knock his door and get the components that you need security enforcement? Because you are fully aware of the DDoS attacks, you are fully aware of misconfiguration issues, and you don't want this to happen.
Yep.
Or maybe you do, I don't know.
Yeah. So this is an excellent question, right? Because if you think of an IoT system, there's usually three different layers, right? So you have your connectivity layer where all your devices are connecting into, then your data lake, right? So where you're kind of storing all this information, and then your application layer where you're kind of exposing to the world the different formulation of these data that you have, applying different services, right? So if you look at, I think it's different for each layer that you go up the chain, right? So when you're talking about the endpoint, it's a different type of, I would say, security and secure enforcement that you need to look at. What type of I would say, onboarding, offboarding rules do you have when you're talking about edge devices? And then, how do you take off when you're talking about legacy devices? What is the offboard procedure? So that way you don't have another device coming on. A lot of times you also have those are your attack vectors for a man in the middle type of attacks, because you have a point-to-point connection, but then somebody can kind of come in between and mimic that device. So what type of I would say, security refreshing policies do you have to make sure that the device that you're actually talking to at the edge is the actual device that you're thinking you're collecting data from, right? That then creates a different problem for you if you, let's just say, have a device connected at your upper layers, right? So it's a cascading effect. Once you have a vulnerability here, that data is what you're collecting in your data lake, could possess different type of, I would say, effects. So think of a machine learning model that's living in your data lake layer. Depending on the data that they're injecting, could have a different effect on what the model is shaped, because you're doing the self-learning type of approach there. That then has implications on the data that you're presenting on the application layer, right? So you really have to think about what are the different attack vectors that you have, and it's different from the application down, right? Because you're now influencing data that could then actuate a certain device when you're talking about an industry, right? So turn on a valve because I see from a different part of a system this type of data coming in from the application layer saying, well, I see this data, now I need to take an action on that, and then you actuate a different valve, right? So in the application layer, what mechanisms are you putting into place where you're validating the assumptions or the proposals that the system is giving you, right? So the system might be telling you, I need to actuate this valve. Do you put a man in the middle to say, well, is this the right behavior, depending on the system, right? So you have to think of different techniques on what's the third validation for you to take that action. So for me, security on those are also layers, right? So what are the mechanisms are you putting on the lower level? what are the mechanisms you're putting in the data layers in regard to the models that are learning from data? What type of controls are you putting, right? So for me, that's a data validation. Is this actual data that I expect from this device, right? Or is this, data that, it's completely out of bound? What is the range checking you're putting in there? And then the application layer is if it has abilities to do control, what are the control mechanisms that you're putting in for making those policy enforcements, right? So we're talking about policy at this application layer. So that kind of is a long answer, but when you're thinking about IT, you have to really break it down to these three different layers.
All right, then thank you for the architectural weave. Dear engineer Mohammed Ali Shahran, what do you think about the question?
Yes, actually, I think the better approach was very great, actually, because any error that happens in any part of this will be cascaded and it will be enlarged. So in case any error happens in the information that's gathered from the IoT, it will go to the database and it will have multiple effects. And this is really very important in what we are thinking, because the IoT system will have multiple layers. For example, you are talking about communication stacks, you are talking about operating systems, you are talking about the interfaces, APIs, a lot of application programming interfaces. You have multiple third-party softwares, and you have the back end and the visualization software, and how you manage all these kind of data. So in this, actually, it's a small error in somewhere, it will be an avalanche error at later stage. So that's why every developer should understand that's very critical. And also, it's not only when we implement the solution, because sometimes we implement the solution and it's fine at certain point of time, but later on, this kind of security or this kind of system that's critical, or it will depend. We have to have an occasional update, actually, because every time a lot of information is coming, and there will be a real necessary for testing and updating every time, actually. And also the issue of the passwords, actually, when you are embedding passwords in certain devices to make it easy to communicate with the server or to communicate with the data and something, it's very important to are changing these embedded passwords every time. It's not like we put only these passwords for a certain time and then it will continue for the lifetime of the product. It cannot be like this. We have to change it every time. And also the automation, how we automate the relation, the integration between different components. This is very important, actually, how we integrate, because this integration need to be rechecked and revisited every time that there's an update on security of every component, because it's in such solutions you have multiple vendors working all together, and creating this kind of integration is very important to have an automation to check what happens to other layers of the solution. One more thing actually related directly to the IoT itself is the remote access. The remote access, actually, as Simon said, you have a lot of data that's coming in this remote access, and while you are using, and some people can sniff or can find this kind of information. So it's really very, very important how you control this kind of information, and all the time, actually, and how you encrypt this kind of information. So it's very thing. One more very critical thing is the third-party applications. And I have an advice for certain people sometimes, is that in case you are able to change the third-party applications every time, and then please do that. Because you will have an application that's working. After some time, you can research and find a better application. Also, you need to change, because in case someone is familiar with this kind of application, you can change it, so you'll stop the chain. The reaction is coming from one solution to another or something. You can, okay, it will take some time, but it will stop the reaction of hacking. Or sometimes, some thing may be hacked for a few months and no one is knowing. So when you change something in the middle, it will help to detect, actually, and to find this problem and how to find it. And also, I have used a certain time, actually, to have the hand checking. The hand checking between devices is very important, because it have critical information. So when you are making your cellular phone, for example, or the IoT device is making communication with the cloud or the fog or something, then it is very important, actually, to make sure that there is an encryption, especially in the handshaking process, when you start the communication between these devices. Because in this area, you will be sharing passwords, you will be sharing some configurations, and some people are working actually on this critical part because they can get a lot of information from this handshaking phase. And also on top of this, I think it's a kind of monitoring. We should have a kind of monitoring every time, so that at least if it's not very regular, then at least let's have it spotted checks sometimes, so that you know what information is going and your operation can be continue smoothly for every time. So I think this is actually like you have to look in the ecosystem, to look on everything, to look continuously and not just on certain point of time, and to have thinking about the long life of this product and how you manage it while it's in operation. So this is
All
actually,
right.
I need just to put this in the developer's mind somehow.
I think you answered the question in extreme detail, which means we can go to the next question. Unless someone wants to add something, because we have like 15 minutes left, including Q&A. So, all right.
I think we can skip and go to Q&A if you think maybe there is some questions.
No, I'm checking them. We can do this question. Don't worry. I'm the moderator. Hold on.
Okay.
Analysis of security concern in all phases of IoT, SDLC, and key points to consider. What do you think, Simon?
Well, so we are all humans, so we make mistakes. That's okay. But we should learn from our mistakes, you know, like somehow in organizations, like especially for the new joiners, like in organization when someone newly joins, so as a developer, you don't give him so much information. You're expecting him to finish the code. Like it's gonna be like coder, like Victoria said. Like he or she is not an engineer. So we need to educate our internal developers and impose our, you know, like our security guidelines and everything. And but like I said, we need one database, like for us ourselves, like incident database, and we need to educate people, like our developers. That's all I can say.
Victoria, do you have any input to this?
No, well, I totally agree. Well, what Simon said, and I guess we already discussed, you know, in other questions, multiple things that we find important to consider. Now, what do I really have to add in that sense? Well, you know, keep talking to each other. I mean, it's not a one-man show in that sense. We all depend on each other. If you have no idea how to address something or have so many ideas, you don't know what's the best idea. It's a creative process. And that's the fun part also of technology. You know, talk to each other. Don't always put everything on Stack Overflow though. But, you know, discuss things together, see where you can automate things out, so you don't again have to look at it all the time. If you know, if you, exactly what Simon said, if you run into something, you learn from it, see how you can automate it in your process. From a QA point of view, we are very used to, you know, kind of QA, kind of the happy flow, the things that, you know, should work as expected. Also add in the things, if, you know, the things that you can anticipate, you don't want this to go wrong, also create a check for that, or an integration check or whatsoever. But also when there has been an incident, also add that part in your software development lifecycle and learn from it and add it in your requirements in the testing phase or whatever phase kind of that incident or vulnerability that you run into, incorporate it back. So then in that sense, you will mature your lifecycle. And I think that's the most important key takeaway that I can provide.
Perfect. Badar, do you want to add something?
Sure, I think it goes back to the point, human, right? There's a human factor to all of this security. So I think every time we mention something, passwords, email, things like that, the core issue is how do you train and elevate the knowledge base of your whether they're developers, whether they're testers, whether they're, you know, just people that are using your software, right? Because they're also creating passwords on your platform. So it's about the human at the end. How do you bring them into that whole life cycle? But I think fundamentally, the other point that Victoria and Simon also mentioned is automation, right? How do we automate as much as possible that way to remove that human error out of the whole life cycle, right? So it's about these two key points, right? So that memory stick that you put in versus that password all comes down to humans, and doing a threat analysis. I think that those are the key fundamental points that you should consider when you're thinking about software development lifecycle, security development lifecycle.
Let's go to the next question then. By the way, if you have any question, I'm asking for the people that are listening to us, feel free to raise your hand or ask via the Q&A box there. Anyway, next question, please. Here we go. Concrete and actionable good practices to enhance the cybersecurity of IoT SDLC. When I say IoT, I always think about, I don't know why, about Mohammed Ali Shahlan. You want to add something? We have 10 minutes left, so and one more question. So I think we all have like 1.5 minutes to answer this question. Mohammed?
Okay, fine. Then I think, okay, actually, it's a very important thing that we need to think about is, as my friend said, actually, it's about education, how you educate everyone to have part on the loop. And as well, I need to think about the disposal of equipment and the disposal of IoT devices, the disposal of software, because it's very important that a lot of people is not taking care about it. When you dispose something, there's a piece of information on this chips that we are using or something. It's very important that this information is disposed safely so that it will not be in the wrong hands who will be using this in not ethical manner or something like this. So this is maybe I need to have it. It's just educate and dispose well as you start and make a journey, make the end of the journey as well in a good shape.
Simon?
Well, like Mohammed is the expert here with the IoT.
You can remove the IoT part, and there is SDLC, the Security Development Lifecycle, which is a Microsoft gig, which I know you're strong at.
No, cybersecurity in IoT devices. No, like I can also give some examples. Like, but we all been talk about the same scenario. Like we need to implement the securities based on for the IoT, like layer by layer, because each layer contains different vulnerabilities, such as like you know the city trams in Sydney or Melbourne. So they all use the Wi-Fi. You know, like when you scan your card, when they come to the stop, it's basically that's your point. You're transferring that data to the basically the endpoint. Like can't explain that one. Like every layer is required different things with the cybersecurity level. So if you are smart enough, you can just go one of the bus stop or tram station. Basically, you can grab all those information. You can poison this information, and then you can send those information back to the server where it should go. So, but like with the software lifecycle, if you look with the secure development lifecycle, with that point, it should be all upgraded. Like Mohammed explained, all the hardware, like it comes with the software or operating system layer. Most of them is the old, like Android 4, Android 3, or some of them is like very old. They don't support the new encryption methods, or they don't support the new Wi-Fi standards. Like even for the way you're transferring this data, it's not secure at the beginning. So you're expecting just like, okay, I can't see the Wi-Fi, so you're expecting like everyone automatically, oh, no one can see the signal, so it should be safe out of the box, right? But it's not. Like if you know what you're doing, you can get this information, you can poison this information, and then you can do a lot of stuff, especially with the names, card numbers, everything. But we already talk about this. It should be upgraded all the time. Like you have to renew your hardware, but it's most of the time you're explaining the situations to the organizations or management, but you're gonna get like a big no because it's expensive. Like you're expecting that they're gonna change the hardware tomorrow or like in a couple of days. Like they spend it like maybe $100 million for each, you know, bus or each tramway. No, it's not. It takes time, but yeah, like sometimes. You know, You need to show them like what you showed them in Saudi Arabia. Okay, good.
All right, let's go to the next question, which is our last question for today. Now, I want recommendations, lessons learned based on your experiences. Victoria, please. What do you recommend?
Well,
considering
being
a hardcore developer, what do you recommend? Honestly, I'm curious as well myself.
well, I also have to think about what my exact recommendation would be in this short time. But I would say, especially if you're a developer, be proud that you're a developer. You're an engineer. You're here to add value. You are here to build, part of the product, whatever you are building. Understand the context. Understand what you're really delivering. It's not just software. Yes, the software is the end product that you're working on, that you're coding, that you're monitoring, but you're somehow adding value to the society. I mean, we are, the technological advances that we are, how to call that, overwhelmed by. It's part of our society now, and if something goes wrong there, it will affect your end user. And it's very important to also understand what the effects would be. I mean, worst case scenario, I don't want to be like too paranoid, but people could die. You have those situations that you can really impact the lives of people. Maybe that's not your field of how to call it, developing software at all, but somehow it will affect someone. And in that sense, I think you should also owe it yourself, if you want to also respect yourself as developer or engineer, to also consider that, really take the time to design the software initially. Eventually, if you have the design, the coding part, it doesn't take that much time. It's kind of just coding the idea. But it's just fun to be involved with that part, because it will also enhance your own awareness. It will help you also design for the things that might go wrong, and you will get kind of the passion to also want to automate that and feel like, hell yeah, we designed it for this. To also create failovers from a DevOps engineer, from system operations, but also from a development point of view, and to also feel confident that, yes, I am upgrading my libraries. So just don't underestimate yourself, don't undervalue yourself as a coder, even when you get pressure from the business. Stand up for who you are in your organization, and value your role in the whole software development lifecycle. I think that's my biggest recommendation. And well, because I also have foot in privacy, don't process too much data just for the sake. Well, it might be handy in the future. Again, you might impact people if there's a data breach. That really just sucks for everyone. Just process what you need. You can always add in new things later.
Thank you. On the sake of time, 30 seconds recommendation, please. Mr. Badar Khan.
30 seconds, okay. Yeah, no.
Sorry.
I think
you had 30 seconds, I just thought about it, but...
No, perfectly fine. I think we can summarize in 30 seconds. It's be vigilant, right? So I think it's about vigilance and being aware of what you're doing. So it's really thinking beyond the product and the software that you're developing, and looking at the overall impact, right? Sometimes we become hermits, and are in our little world. This is my piece of code, and this is my piece of area. So really think about the big picture, right? And back up and think about it. It's sometimes hard to do, but that will then make you aware of, what is this piece of code that I'm developing have an impact on the overall system and external world. And I would say, I think every piece of code has an impact on somebody's life, right? So whether it's a small app that you create on the Android store, that has an impact, because somebody's going to go there and use it. Either he's wasting his time. He might be, if you don't think about the ergonomics of things, he might be just swiping and might get some, some issues with his thumb, or have a health and well-being issue, right? So it could be some sort of issue about how he thinks and processes the world, right? So really think about everything that you're doing does have an impact, whether it's an industry, when you're talking about running trains and power plants, right? The stuff that we used to do, we develop here, to then all the way to a basic app. So it does have an impact. Just be vigilant about what you're doing.
Thank you. Dear Engineer Mohammed.
Yeah, for me, I think software is eating the world. So developers should think that of the trust circle that they have, and test this trust circle every time, so that they can inject value in every part of the ecosystem that we are working in.
Thank you. And Simon?
Well, never stop learning. That's basically my recommendation. But like I'm learning every day, like because like we talked before, like most of the times developer feels like okay, now I'm great, I know this, you know. But like that's the point. Like when you do mistakes, you know, like when you are 100% sure with something, like you can make bigger mistakes in that period of time. So that's why I like every day learn about everything. Look your libraries and your you know, your code, and from lesson learned from your based on your experience. Like I'm very lucky, so I know I'm a developer. Like I'm also a trainer on the Microsoft side, so I can see the fictional side of the Microsoft, which is like, you know, fictional companies. Like it's not real companies. Like there's the fictional problems. And I'm also doing the services side on the customer. So I compare this to both worlds, like it's completely different. So some people coming from classrooms, they might expecting, oh, the world will be like this, you know, like a blue world. No, it's not. The world is real. So when you join these teams, that's the way that you're gonna feel the pressure.
Thanks, Simon.
No worries. That's it.
I know we are 1 minute over, but I have to ask, the guitars at the back, Victoria, are you playing music?
Yes, I have a few of them. I
Oh,
haven't
yeah,
really
so-
practiced in a while, but
yeah.
I used to be in a band as a lead singer and also a guitarist, or well, multiple bands. So yeah.
Perfect. Maybe next time we can add some music in the session to make it even more enjoyable. Anyway, we had Badar from Saudi Arabia. Again, Mohammed, if I'm not wrong, you're also from Saudi Arabia. Simon in Sydney, Australia. Victoria, you are in Amsterdam, if I'm not wrong. No?
No, Eindhoven, the Netherlands.
Netherlands, yeah, I mean just Eindhoven, which is next to it. And I'm supposed to be in Dubai, but I'm also in Sydney, Australia. So thank you very much for joining. You can hear people are happy with the session. For the closing note, I would like to hand out to Rahul. Before that, thank you very much, EC Council, to bringing us together. You know, in that little screen, you can see the half of the globe here. Thank you, Victoria, for the wonderful inputs. Badar, for putting the architectural weave. Dear Mohammed, for highlighting one more time why it's important to take care of IoT security as well. And Simon, to remind us why hackers are in our bag. Again, thank you very much. And Rahul, you got the word.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Adal. Thank you so much, Dr. Adal. Good day to all of you. I am Rahul West, and I am the business head for EC Council's Masterclass events. Keeping the cutoff time in mind, we will be emailing the questions, if any, to the panelists, and we'll be taking these questions offline. I hope that's fine with the panelists. Let me begin with thanking the panel members, starting with Victoria, Badar, Engineer Mohammed, Simon, and our very own Dr. Adal. Thank you for taking out time from your busy schedules to contribute to such knowledge-sharing platforms for the industry. Having to hear such varied perspectives only broadens the learning horizons for each listener here. So I'm pretty sure each one of us will take back something from this session, for sure. On behalf of EC Council, I would like to sum up this very informative session. Our panel today touched upon various important points, starting right from avoiding the security incidents during development. What exactly is a secure development lifecycle? The panel also shared their top 3 tips for maintaining product security, amongst other relevant topics. Thanks once again, panel members. I would finally like to thank our very own audience for being so attentive. I hope you enjoyed the session as much as we did. Request you all to keep supporting these initiatives from EC Council, and we will make sure we bring you many more such platforms where the who's who of the industry will come together to discuss topics relevant to you. So stay tuned. Having said that, we have come to the conclusion for this session. I hope all of you have had something to take away from this industry experts and wish all of you have a great day ahead. Thank you so much and hope to see you on the 27th for our CISO Summit. Take care. Bye-bye.